Hi Miles, thanks for this most recent footage. P4 definitely tidying up. Overall move, much more under control than it was previously. I've seen it look better when doing the drill. But I think in all, compared to where you were a few months ago, there's a marked improvement. The overall look of the backswing. A few things that you might want to consider. Obviously, it's just more work on the drills that we've discussed in the past. The hat sort of conveniently disguises it, but the head's still sort of twisting a fraction too much. Maybe just a fraction too much turn. So more work on the swinging back and stopping to tidy up P4 further. There's also a slight translation as you approach the top, where the sort of turn, the excessive turn kicks in. You can't extend enough to stay centered. You couldn't really left tilt anymore to offset that extension anyway. So as you go a little bit too far, you get a little bit of translation, which is linked to the left knee coming in a little bit excessively, etc, etc. So a little bit more work on that, tidying up P4. Like I said, considering where you were a few months ago, I quite like how things are looking. In relation to the down the line footage, beautiful takeaway, P1 to P2, really tidy. P3, textbook, trail leg straightening, lead leg flexing, shoulder tilts are good. I really like it at that point, very reminiscent of what you would see on YouTube looking at Mike Bennett hitting shots, where P4 is a little bit shorter, club appears to be a little bit more laid off, and accumulator 4 is more under control. That little bit of extra turn, you can see levels out the lead shoulder, pushes the head up and around, offsets the left tilting that you've been doing, drifts you off the ball, etc, etc. So a little bit of tidying up, a little bit more controlling of accumulator 4, the left arm, that feeling of a 3/4 backswing. I love the P4 when you swing to the top and stop, and I know it's frustrating sometimes that you can't get that in as much as you would like to at speed. The slower you do it, the better you do it. You lose that sort of momentum at the top. One thing I would highlight to you, and it relates a little bit to what I'm going to come to in the downswing shortly, at the top of the backswing we start to lose a little bit of pressure there with the right hand against the left thumb. You can see a gap opening up. I would suggest that when you practice, you either pay attention to really sort of pushing against the left thumb with the pad of the right hand, or alternatively, to help you with that, what you can do is put a T-peg. It can be quite tricky, but if you put a T-peg between the left thumb and the hand, so that you've really got to sort of, again, squeeze and maintain that pressure point throughout the course of the swing, that would help control things a little bit when we come to the downswing aspect of the swing. So, you know, a little bit of work on the pressure points there would help you going forward with the overall tidiness of the swing. It would potentially stop that shaft getting too long in the backswing. You can see as the arms go along, there's a little bit of a lag. Shaft softens and dampens a little bit too much. So again, that pressure that you have at P2 is lost from P2 to P4. So you can see there is a, just zoom in on that again. We've got clearly got pressure with the right hand against the left thumb, which diminishes at the top. Now as you start down, you have to regain that pressure. The act of doing that can start to close the club face I would certainly never advise anyone to do it. I've seen players do it and repeat it and get away with it. I certainly wouldn't ever encourage anybody to do it. So in your case, we're trying to control the sort of closure on the club face through the hit. We're in a pretty neutral position here when looked at from down the line. It's a little bit long, and the blade can, it doesn't always, but can close a little bit too quickly. A little bit too much rolling through the hit. Anyway, onto the sort of downswing portion of the swing, if you will. Something that we've not really talked a great deal about because we needed to tidy up P4. That's in a position that's functional now. It just needs a little bit of tidying up. But what I'd like to look at really is what happens from P4 onwards. So I'm just going to sync these two swings up as best I can. Look at what happens from P4. So from P4, there are a number of ways we can lower the butt of the club. One is by firing the accumulators in the correct sequence, where the left arm accumulator 4 fires first, followed by the right arm accumulator 1, the wrist accumulator 2, and then a gradual rolling of accumulator 3 through the hit. Another way we can do it is as we're demonstrating here, which is we hang onto the accumulators a little bit too long. The right shoulder, if you look at the down the line footage, the right shoulder starts to drop down more than it comes around. So ideally we would want to let the right shoulder working from P4 down and around, tracing its steps, turning in a tilted angle as it did on the backswing. And what we see is a very quick levelling out of the shoulders. The right shoulder starts to work down rather than down and around. Accumulator 1, the right arm, is hung on to a little bit too long. Accumulator 4 doesn't advance enough due to what's gone on before with the shoulder and the right arm. And as a result, what we start to do now is we start to dump the wrist angles, and you can see there that the club catches up with the hands very quick. The club passes the hands very quick. So we've got a high rate of overtaking and a high rate of closure. Not on every shot, but certainly on the longer clubs. So we need to look at improving that move. You can see through the ball. Lead wrist extends a lot. Right hand rolling over, head dropping back. So we need a better sequence from the top. We need to understand what we're trying to achieve from the top, and we want to try and encourage a club, or we want to encourage the arms to engage sooner so that the wrists don't get dumped. So what a better player like yourself will do is hang on to accumulator 1, the right arm, hang on to accumulator 4, head starts to drop back, right shoulder starts to drop under, and from there now really it depends on what you want to do as an individual. You do a pretty good job of dumping the angles and swinging left. For me as a player, I do a pretty pathetic job of that, and from that position you're in at P5.5, I'd be blocking this thing so far over here. It's untrue with the occasional snap hook, so it depends very much on the individual what you do from there, but we definitely need a better sequencing from the top and a little bit more of an appreciation of what this right shoulder needs to do. I'll email you a video that I did for one of my pupils where he was demonstrating the two extremes of what the right shoulder did, and you can see the effects of it. But what I want to do is work on this face-on footage more than anything. I'll send you the video that relates to the down the line footage when I get the email to you with this this lesson. So if we take a little look down the line, I'll swap you with Grant. Sorry, I do apologise. We're going to look from face on. Grant up on the left, yourself up on the right. Just make that a little bit bigger. And let's take a little look at some differences in these two actions from P4 to P6. So take Grant to 4. 4 more under control than yourself, as discussed previously. You can see the difference in the amount of turning. At this point, some great similarities, and then we just turn a little bit too much, get the arms travelling a little bit too far. And the ironic thing here is the further the arms travel on the way back, the quicker they have to move on the way down to keep up with the body. You can see there the body outraces the arms. And if we look at yourself at, say, 5.5 compared to Grant, you can start to see that the right arm is starting to straighten out more than we see with yourself. And as a result, the wrist angle is being maintained longer with Grant than with yourself. As we carry on through a little bit further, we see that the handle gets further forward at impact. The further forward the handle is, the more chance you have of hitting out at this golf ball. So you've got a little bit of contradiction going on there. We've got push elements in there. We've got plenty of hip slide. We've got the right shoulder substantially lower than the left, which would suggest a lot of push. We've got the head dropping back. But what happens through the hip with the lead wrist is where the pull comes from. And that can be frustrating because it maybe feels here like you're going to push it, but then there's a lot of pull going in very late. And then through. I want to do a number of things at this stage. I'd like you to hit some shots with a towel folded up. Maybe fold it 3 times so that it sits about 2 inches off the ground. Position that towel about 12 to 14 inches behind the golf ball that you're hitting. And what this is going to do is encourage a slightly more descending blow, which will start to encourage a little bit more flexing of the lead knee coming into impact and start to discourage the wrists from dumping so fast coming through in the hip. The dumping of the wrist really fast is really shallowing out the descent and causing the club to pass the hands a little bit too quick. So that drill is primarily going to tighten up the radius, encourage you to lead with the handle a little bit more, discourage the head dropping back, etc, etc. The next drill I'd like to introduce would be stopping at chest height, and then when you get to that position, I'm just going to run Grant through. Feel like the arms and the shaft. Now Grant doesn't demonstrate it perfectly here, but you get the gist of what I'm getting at. Hit some shots. They only need to be punch shots with a 7 or an 8 iron, and get a feel that the club and the arms are like steel rods pointing straight down the range at that point. If you compare that to your own move, You can see there that there's a lot of overtaking. Right wrist really sort of rolling over. Club passing the hands very quickly. And we want to really control that. Now, the act of achieving the look on the left will start to encourage different moves overall in your downswing. So we're working on the through swing to start to implement some changes in the earlier part of the downswing, and that that doesn't always work, but I think in this case it will have a profound effect on the way things are working. So working with the towel behind to tighten the radius, to encourage the handle to lead, and hitting a lot of shots where you make a full swing but stop quick. Now when you stop quick, I don't want you to recock the wrists. You've plenty of that going on anyway. I want you to feel like the arms are like steel rods on the way through. So we want to see with yourself at P9, right arm parallel with the floor. I want to see the right arm and the shaft pointing straight down the range like steel rods. Obviously Grant there's not doing the drill. He's doing a full shot, but you can see there's elements of that in there, and certainly much more of that in than we see demonstrated with yourself. Let me just shrink that down a little bit so you get an idea. At this point in the swing, I want to see both arms straight, left wrist flat, shaft pointing straight down the range. Don't react too much to where the golf balls are going. You should find it pretty easy to hit some push shots doing that. If memory serves me right, there's some nice footage of Charlie on YouTube, Charlie Wee, hitting some drivers where he'd lost the ability to push the ball or draw the ball, and he was punching some drivers down doing a very similar drill. If I do get a chance, I'm about to go on holiday with the family, but if I do get a chance before we go, I'll try and dig that footage out. If you've got any questions, feel free to give me a call. The pull comes from too much closure of the club face, too high an overtaking rate, too much flexing of the lead wrist. We've got to really calm that down through the hit from P4 to P5.5, looking at it in its taking for what it is, all things being equal. You should hit a lot of blocks, but from 5.5 to P9, you just throw everything away. You dump the angles, you flex the lead wrist, etc. And that's really where it's at for you, Miles. Firming up that left wrist, reducing the overtaking rate, reducing the rate of closure. Good luck with it. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Well done.